Who are the Rayne Syndicate? What does this faction, more often than not the very first faction one stumbles upon in their playthrough, represent on the Palpagos Islands? Who are they? What of their boss? And what are their goals and their plans? What do they stand for, and why do they do what they do? Let's dive deep, or as deep as the game as of me writing this script will let me, and maybe we can infer some things that the game may not tell us up front when it comes to the Rayne Syndicate faction, led by the first tower boss, the young Zoe Rayne herself.
Is there more to us than the words we say, the games we play? Can we know that we're not dreaming?
The Rayne Syndicate, or more commonly labeled the Syndicate, is one of 5 prominent factions that exist in Palworld for the player to encounter and act as a barrier to the player in the world, serving as a hill to overcome and check their strength overall until they become more capable tamers. Often seen wielding various weapons ranging from clubs, handguns, assault rifles, rocket launchers, grenades, flamethrowers, and even enormous miniguns, it's safe to say that the Syndicate have access to all kinds of ordnance in the world. Who supplies their arms is relatively unknown, but it may be likely that they build their own weapons and armaments. What we do know is that they are being directed by someone intelligent and cunning enough to have a connection to almost every area in the world, no matter how far. The Syndicate's reach is very widespread across the Palpagos Islands. Most often, players will encounter them starting off on one of the smaller beginner islands that a player can respawn on when they die. Their heaviest encounter rate is on the center islands, where most of the early game and mid game activity will take place between levels 1 through 30. From there, their influence continues to reach out. How often they are encountered gets weaker the further out you go as you encounter other factions, with exception to the Northwest Island, where the Syndicate is extremely prominent and are the strongest members to be seen among them. But in the areas where they dominate, their reach is felt. Dotted around the Palpagos Islands are various encampments, where the Syndicate have set up outposts manned by several members, often heavily armed, with various signs of these camps showing short and long-term living, with walls and walkways, tents and cooking pots. In the center of each camp, though, is a cage prominently featured, which more often than not contains a captured PAL, poached either from the wild or from another PAL tamer. It's unknown, as they are known in the game to poach both wild PALs as well as steal PALs from other people. If a player can defeat all of the Syndicate defenders via with weapons or using their PAL, or taking advantage of wild PALs that are often attacked by the base defenders, or even just have their PAL distract the defenders while slipping past, and then releasing the PAL captured within, this will allow them to liberate the captured PAL and add them to their roster without the need to fight and use a PAL sphere on said PAL. This begs the question, however, why do they poach PALs? What do they gain by stealing and illegally hunting PALs? And why is it illegal for them to capture PALs, but not for other people? Perhaps it's the methods, as instead of PAL spheres, they use cages to contain them. PALs don't seem to mind the PAL spheres, but within the confines of the cage, they look sad and depressed. As for what happens after the Syndicate acquires these PALs, their ultimate fate is unknown, and honestly, that's for the best, thanks to some insight provided by their leader. Enter their leader, Zoe Rayne. At about 19 years old, she is canonically the youngest of the 5 Palpagos Tower bosses. The other 4 we will cover in other videos along with their respective factions, but Zoe gives us most of our insight into the Rayne Syndicate's reasons for why it does what it does, and their overall goal through her diary entries. The first 2 diary entries read,
I don't have a family. My father disappeared a long time ago, and I've never seen my mother's face. The only ones who raised me are those guys and Grisbolt. That's why I know I have no choice but to survive in this tiny little world. Those guys all chase around pals with their guns. They capture the ones they hurt and sell them to those other weird guys. In return, they get food. They even share with me. That's why I don't have to be hungry. I don't think any of those guys really care about me. They just keep me alive because I'm the daughter of one of their bosses. I still believe that, even if I'm a boss now too. Grisbolt was one of the pals they were going to sell, but she looked so lonely in her cage. She was just like me, and father, I thought. I was still little back then, so I couldn't control myself. I waited until everybody was sleeping, opened Grisbolt's cage, and ran off far away with her. I shared half a slice of my breakfast toast with her, but we were still hungry by evening and went back to the base. Of course, all the guys were super angry. They threw me in a cage with Grisbolt, and I thought we were going to get taken away. But Grisbolt protected me. Not even their guns or bats could beat her. How did she get captured in the first place if she's that strong? I bet she didn't even try to escape. The big dummy. I gave Grisbolt a command. She called down a huge bolt of lightning that wiped out all the guys. They didn't wake up until the next morning. Ever since then, I've been with Grisbolt.
From her first 2 diary entries, we learned that Zoe inherited her position as boss of the Rayne Syndicate because her father disappeared long ago, where to nobody knows, and she's never known who her mother was, if she even lives still. All she knows was that the Syndicate raised her alongside her Grisbolt. Her top priority at the moment is that she survives in the Palpagos Islands, however she must. The Syndicate's methods are not kind, as they poach various pals to sell to weird guys, whom we'll go over if we can get more information about them, known only as the black market at this time, in exchange for food. Though she never describes what food they get, given where we meet a marketeer, it shouldn't take too much imagination. They don't seem to care too much about Zoe, only caring for her because she's their boss's daughter. Even if she is their boss now, she still believes this to be the case. The only one she truly cares about, and who cares about her, is her Grisbolt, whom she rescued from her cage late at night, indicating the Syndicate were going to sell her for food. If one were to go to visit a black marketeer, often the first one found deep in the hidden mineshaft, one wouldn't have to think very hard exactly what fate would have befallen Grisbolt had she not succeeded. Alas, after escaping, hunger forced them to return, and it was here that Grisbolt showed its true potential to Zoe, forming a powerful bond between the two. It was obvious that Grisbolt didn't try to fight being put into the cage. This means that there is a potential theory that Zoe's Grisbolt was actually her father's Grisbolt, and that she was tasked to stay behind and protect Zoe and serve as her bodyguard, caring for her in place of her father. But what of the Syndicate's relations to other factions in the world?
There's a group that opposes ours, stationed a little ways away from where we live. They don't like the way we sell pals and use weapons. Our group sneers at them and calls them the Free Pal Alliance. We're always fighting with them for no reason at all. If I stop and think about it, I bet they're not bad people if they love pals that much. I asked one of the guys who's been around for a long time about it, but he said it was complicated. Apparently, our group has been around for a long time, and we've always been fighting with those FPA guys. He said he doesn't know the real reason behind it, but we've been fighting so long that there's no hope of ever getting along.
Zoe talks of another group that opposes hers, operating close by that seems to be opposite the Syndicates in every way. They are known as the Free Pal Alliance, and they seem to be dedicated to protecting pals, opposing the Syndicate and pushing back incursions into the territory by the Syndicate, as well as tamers similar to the player. They stand in opposition to how the Syndicate captures and sells pals for food, and their choice of weaponry in their illegal poaching and pal exploitation activities. But Zoe, having developed a close bond with Grisbolt, doesn't hate the FPA. After all, if they love pals so much, they can't be bad people, right? we'll discuss that group in another video. But we learn also the Syndicate and the FPA have been fighting since long before she was born. And despite how it's complicated, nobody seems to have a real reason as to why they're fighting anymore. And at this point, there is no hope of either party reconciling and making peace with the other. It should also be noted that even though there is a law enforcement, the PIDF, or Palpagos Island Defense Force, seems to be less interested in stomping out the Rayne Syndicate. But we'll cover this faction in another video. Needless to say, as far as the two are concerned, they are probably enemies.
Sometimes I wonder if there's anything beyond the sea. The only thing I can see far off in the distance is that huge tree. I've never heard anyone talk about what's beyond that place. Apparently, some brave guy from long ago went to see the outside world, but he never came back. I have heard about people coming from beyond the sea, though. I don't know what those kinds of people do, but they say they use tools different from our own. That's why I know there must be something beyond the sea. A whole bunch of islands? A whole bunch of people? A whole bunch of things? It sounds scary, but I'd like to try going sometime.
The one difference between Zoe and her syndicate is that Zoe is not like her followers, who seem only interested in surviving in the Palpagos Islands. She wants to go beyond the sea that she can see. She knows there has to be a world beyond what she can see, beyond that giant tree that all can see, no matter where they are. Perhaps that's why her father left. He had to leave someone to guard the tower. Someone related to him, apparently, so that he could try and leave. But there has to be more than what she does know. As terrifying as the prospect is of leaving familiarities, she'd still like to go, if for no other reason than just to see.
I've started to wonder, why am I guarding this big tower again? I always thought it was obvious since Father also used to do this, but now that I think about it, I have no idea why. From what I've heard about it, they say there's a legend passed down on this island. They said this tower is somehow related to that legend, and that it has some big, great power. What kind of power, I wonder? Even if that's true, why does this power have to be protected? Anyway, even though I don't really know why, I'm always here, protecting this tower. There are other towers around the island, and they say people like me guard them all.
Zoe is one of the few bosses that actually questions her role in this world, asking why is she even guarding the tower? As one gets older, one starts questioning things that once were absolute to them. Such as, why is she guarding it? What purpose does it serve? Before she guarded the tower because that was what her father did, and she wanted to follow in his footsteps. But that was before. She knows of a legend being passed down on the island, how the tower supposedly contains a great power, but that still does not answer the question of why does it have to be protected. She doesn't understand it herself, but she knows that she has to protect the tower. And she knows that there are other towers with people like her guarding those towers. As for her syndicate, well, we know that they now operate based on how she was raised, that they are catching, stealing, and poaching pals from all over the islands to sell in exchange for food. While they seem capable of crafting bases, they are mostly makeshift encampments, using whatever is around and clumsily fashioned together. They also seem unable to be self-sufficient, meaning they can't grow their own food, else they wouldn't need to sell pals for food. As for their weapons and ammo, they might be able to make their own, but as we don't see a syndicate base that is used to mass-produce weapons and ammunition currently, we can only speculate. Based on the trailers, however, it may be possible that they brutally exploit pals to achieve their goals to survive. Far worse than what players could ever do. The Palpagos Islands have a way of making people shrug off their personal moral compasses and beliefs when they arrive. In this case, those who join the Syndicate are willing to do whatever they must in order to ensure they survive in the Palpagos Islands. Heavy miniguns, assault rifles, grenades, rocket launchers, nothing is off the table to ensure they can feed themselves at night. No pal is safe from their crosshair. Zoe Rayne herself, maybe it's just youth giving her hope for her future, but she learned the harsh lessons that you must do what you must in order to survive in a world where the only true allies you have are the ones that are willing to fight for you as well as fight alongside you. After all, in this world not every pal is going to be your friend. To some, you are probably just a meal to them. So before I leave, here's a question. If you were to wake up in the Palpagos Islands tomorrow, does survival come first for you? And if so, would you join the Rayne Syndicate to ensure you survive to tomorrow?